Finally, after months of promising I would do this, I finally started the video on how to make a beeswax wrap. If you haven't seen these before, they're basically an alternative to cling film. They mold very easily, they're really good for awkward shapes, like if you have a jar that doesn't have a lid or a piece of squash. All you have to do is wrap it around whatever you want to cover, hold it there so that the heat of your hand molds it to take the shape that you want, and then that's pretty much it. They're incredibly easy to use and store, and they'll normally last between 3 to 6 months. You know that it doesn't really work when you can scrunch it up and it starts to unfurl like this, and once it starts to feel a little less like parchment and more like fabric, and it's lost the stiffness that it used to have. Once this happens, what I normally do is I just pop it straight into the compost bin, and it's completely biodegradable, so you don't really have to worry about it. Today I'm going to be using some of the fabrics that I've designed. I already made an old one with the bees pattern that you can see, but this is the one that I was very excited to do, which was my green bugs, and now I finally have some green bug wraps. So all you need is a piece of fabric. If it's got edges which are coming loose and a few threads coming free, don't worry about that. What you need to do is you need to get some pinking shears, and these are shears which just have crocodile teeth. That's how I always describe them, and you just want to cut around the edge. You don't need to do this, it's not entirely necessary. Once the wax is on the fabric, it will hold it pretty well, but this just makes it even less likely that a thread is going to come loose. So I always take the pinking shears around the fabrics and cut them into the shape that I want. Once I've cut the fabric, we're going to be moving on to the beeswax, and you can use whatever kind of beeswax you want. I have pellets, I also have the cubes, but personally I prefer to use the pellets just because it saves me a lot of time. If I want to use any of the cube blocks that I have to take them over a peeler or a shave or anything like that, and it just adds time to a process which I would rather not have time added to, so I prefer the pellets for that. I also have a tray that I keep specifically for any crafts or DIY, just because beeswax is a nightmare to get off any kind of tray without a ton of hot water, so I just have a tray which I use entirely for crafts. You put the fabric on it, you sprinkle the beeswax, and don't worry if it's not covering everything, because the thing is, once it starts to melt, it's just going to follow the fabric line anyway. So just make sure that you have enough beeswax on the tray, pop it in the oven, and put the oven on a medium to high heat. Now don't leave your beeswax alone. You need to watch it, and once it's all melted like this, take it out of the oven. It's very easy to walk away and get distracted and the thing starts burning, so keep an eye on it. Take it out of the oven, and once it's out of the oven, what you want to do is you want to get something like a fork. You're going to lift up the edges, and you're going to just wave it backwards and forwards until it dries. It's going to dry within a few seconds, and then that's pretty much it. If something like this happens where you maybe waited a little too long and there's a layer of beeswax, just stick it back in the oven, wait for it to all melt down again, then peel it off and wave it around until it's dry. Now what if you have a huge piece of cloth, for example? Don't worry about it. Just fold it over, add a little bit more beeswax than you normally would, because this is going to have to go through a few layers of cloth, so just do that. Stick it in the oven, and then it's pretty much the same process. If you're worried about the edges maybe not getting enough, or somewhere where there's a ridge in the fabric, pop more beeswax underneath it, and then while it's still in the oven, open the door and just go over it with a fork to make sure that that beeswax distributes evenly. Now take it out of the oven. While it's still warm, take the fork, lift up the edges so that you don't burn yourself. Beeswax, when it's melted and hot, it can burn you. I have done this, so be careful. And then while it's still warm, just try and hold it up so that it's all unfurled, and then wave it around like the previous pieces until it's completely dry. This shouldn't take any longer than a few seconds, and then that's it. One last thing to mention, if you don't want to cut the beeswax wrap while it's still just fabric and it doesn't have any beeswax on it, you can just wait until the wax is on it and then cut it into the shape that you want. This can be a bit easier because it's stiffer, and just cut a variety of shapes for any jars or any unusual fruit that you regularly eat. Pop it in a drawer to store it, and that's it. You're done.